cabinet colleagues, Tushars. It's a privilege for me to be here this afternoon and to be afforded the opportunity to speak with you. I've been here from the beginning of this conference, and I know that we have covered a lot of grounds. So my presentation is going to be a little different because naturally, as the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, I am expected to speak to you on matters relating to my sector. So what I will speak to you about is not about infrastructure, is not about road, is not about water, not about sports facilities and business opportunities, but I want to speak to you about something that is equally or perhaps of greater importance, and that is the law, your rights, your duties, and your responsibilities. Let me begin by taking this opportunity to congratulate all of you who have been recently elected as Tushars. Upon your shoulders reside the grave and serious responsibility of executing governance and leadership in your communities. The Amerindians of our country is governed by a different system, a system that applies to no other group of people in our country. You are a unique group of citizens, specially authorized by the Parliament of our country and by the Constitution to regulate your own affairs in your communities. And it is the Tushao who, by and large, is expected to lead from the front in the administration of the affairs of your communities. Now, all of you are Tushaos, and unless you understand what your duties are, unless you understand what your governance structure is, unless you understand what your roles are and your responsibilities are, you will not be able to discharge the functions that devolve upon you by the laws of our country. And the main piece of legislation that governs you and that speaks to all these issues to which I've made reference is our Amerindian Act, which we enacted in the year 2006. This Amerindian Act stands out as a unique piece of legislation when compared with legislation anywhere. It is this piece of legislation, for example, that creates your village council. Every Amerindian village has a village council. And it is that village council that governs the village. And the head of that village council is the Tushaos. And it is this legislation that establishes it in every single community. And as you would know, and I'm speaking, some of you may know and some of you may not know because you may be new to Tushaos, the size of your village council depends upon the population of your village. So that's the first thing that you must understand, and that's why you are required to keep a register of every person in your village, because the size of your village And size matters for Amerindian communities. The size of your village determines a number of things, including your governance structure and how many members will sit on your district council. So it is imperative that you get a copy of this Amerindian Act, and not one copy, but several copies. Each Tushao and each councillor on the village council should be equipped with a copy of this document. You cannot read it one time and understand it and know it. And you have to make constant references to it to understand what it says and to guide you in the execution of your day-to-day duties as Tushaos and as councillors. Because the decision-making process itself, when you sit as a collective at the district council, at the village council, the way that you make decisions are set out step by step in this legislation. Because significantly, you can't, as a grouping, make decisions or make certain types of decisions without going back to your people, the people of the village, and get their input. And only when you get their majority support, in most cases, then decisions can be taken at the level of the village council. So it is of utmost importance that you get a copy of this and you read it constantly. This should be your daily diet. Read it all the time. It's the only way that you can get effective and legal governance in accordance with this structure that is outlined here. The elections that you just had was done in accordance with the provisions of this act. The meeting that is taking place here is being done in accordance with the provisions of this act. And that is why I saw yesterday or this morning on social media a gentleman claiming that he was put out of this meeting, or he was prevented from coming in to this meeting. But the law provides who can attend this meeting and who cannot attend this meeting. The meeting is for Tushaos or Amerindians invited by the Tushaos. So if you didn't invite him, he has no right to be here. But you will only know that if you read the law. I give you that example to demonstrate to you that unless you know the law and you read it, you understand it, then people will take advantage of you and of your communities, and you will not be able to defend yourselves and your community. Another important thing is no one can enter your village without your permission. Many of you don't know that. Unless you give permission, no one can enter your village. And it is you as a grouping of citizens are the only citizens who have that type of power in your hands. You can go into any other community in this country, any other village in this country, without permission of the villagers, but not in Amerindian communities. And you need to know that, and the way that you will know that is it is all set out in this piece of legislation. Some of you also are the only grouping of citizens who are entitled to title for the land in which you live by virtue of your ethnicity, and communal title at that. No other ethnic grouping in this country has that power and has that right. And of course, with that right comes responsibilities. And that is why we have had this constant battle with the mining community, because no one can mine in your community, in lands that fall within your village council, without your permission and without an agreement from you as a collective. Not the side agreement that I keep hearing about, that some want to shall have one side that nobody else know about. That is not how it is to be done. It's a decision that has to be collectively made, and the agreement has to be in writing, and it must stipulate the terms, and you are to be paid a fee called a tribute based upon the yield of the mining activities. Now, unless you read this law and understand all those fineries, you will not be able to represent your community and get the best interest, get the best possible deal in the better interest of your community. So everything boils down to what is contained in this law, because this is the law that principally regulates how you conduct your day-to-day affairs and how you conduct your governance structure. And you must understand also the role of the ministry, and the minister in particular, because the minister is authorized by the parliament. I see all kinds of reckless, foolish statements being made by politicians that the minister is interfering in Amerindian affairs. Those statements are made because people don't understand what the law says. The parliament gave this minister of Amerindian affairs certain powers, and you must understand what those powers are. The minister, for example, is an ex officio member of the National Tushao Council. She sits on this council by virtue of being a minister. I see they say that the minister is interfering with the council. The minister is a member of the council. How can the minister be interfering? And the minister didn't give herself that power. Parliament gave her that power. And let me tell you about the history of this bill, which is the law. Of course, it was passed under the People's Progressive Party because we recognize the importance of putting in place a sound regulatory framework that is accountable, that is transparent, but most importantly, that is autonomous and give you independence to govern yourself. We did that for you. And we didn't impose it. We spent over 2 years consulting with you. Every single village was consulted with. Every Tushao at the time was met, and their submissions, their suggestions reduced into writing and brought back to Georgetown. So this is not something that the PPP stayed in Georgetown and imposed upon your backs. This is a law that you crafted based upon the recommendations that you made. And then when the recommendations were received from every one of the communities, Then a select committee was appointed, and that select committee went through all the recommendations. A select committee comprising of government and opposition. And this law was a consensual law. Every single provision was agreed upon by both the opposition and the government of the day. It's the same PNC opposition. The same PNC opposition. So they now can't come and say that they disagree with a particular provision of the law, because they sat with us and it was a consensual product. I digress to give you that historical backdrop so that you understand this piece of law and you understand how it evolved. No one imposed this upon you. This is what you asked for. And since 2006, we as a government, we were not in office from 2015 to 2020, but from 2006 to 2015 and from 2020 to now, we have ensured that this law is faithfully complied with. Take, for example, and you know it more than I do, the way that your Tushao Council used to be pre-planned for you when the other government was in power. They scrapped, in one case, it was made public. When you came up with your agenda, they tore it up and they gave you an agenda. You know that you planned this agenda with the minister as a member of the council. And the ministry has a regulatory role in organizing your activities. And the good thing about this law, and the good thing about laws generally, is once it is in writing, it is there for everyone to see. And you can look back at it and see whether you are going right or wrong. I don't have the time to go through the act section by section, but perhaps we can do that at another engagement. Bring all the two shows together, or perhaps in the region, and go through section by section so that you understand every section of the law. In the constitution of our country, there is a provision that the PPP government put in the constitution again. Now, our constitution protects everyone from discrimination on the ground of race, ethnicity, gender, sex, class, creed, religion, and a whole set of grounds. No one can be discriminated against in Guyana by any state agency or even private entity. Because while the Constitution relates to you and the state, we have laws that govern person-to-person relationship that are not necessarily caught in the Constitution. The Amerindians of our country is the only ethnic group that the state can discriminate positively in favor of. Do you understand what that means? It is you are the only group of people that we can say, and no one can take us to court or accuse us of violating the Constitution, if we treat you positively over and above the rest of the population. And that is a tremendous power that you have. Why you think that we can say out of the LCDS fund, we can say that we are taking out X chunk and give it to Amerindians alone. You know why we can do that? It's not only because you have been the custodian of our forests for hundreds of years. That's not the only reason. The reason is because in the Constitution, the government is authorized to treat you specially, and no other race can sue us in the court for discrimination. Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, Chinese Guyanese, Portuguese Guyanese are not getting a lump sum of allocation out of the LCDS funds because of their ethnicity. You are getting that. And the only way that we can positively discriminate in your favor in that way is because the Constitution permits it. If that provision was not there in the Constitution, then an Afro-Guyanese or an Indo-Guyanese could have sued the government. I said, you can't give Amerindians alone. You can't give Amerindians alone. You have to give us too. But if they try to do that, we just hold up the Constitution and say Amerindians are entitled to be treated differentially in a positive manner. Not in a negative manner, in a positive manner only. So I thought I would make that point and move on. Another point that I want to highlight to you is to inform you that His Excellency the President has instructed that we establish an office of the Deeds and Commercial Registry Authority in all the far-flung regions of our country, all the interior regions of our country. Now, what are the functions of this office and how will it impact upon your lives? So the Deeds and Commercial Office performs many functions. If you want to do any legal transfer of property, that is the office that you have to go to transfer title from one place to another, one person to another. That will not apply to you because you have communal title, and your title and the rules regarding your title are set out in this legislation. And I will deal with titling later. But it performs a number of other functions. So if you need, many of you may need to do a deed. A deed is a legal instrument that you can use to do many things. For example, you can gift your property to anyone of your choice. And if you're giving them, you're not selling them, so you don't have to do an agreement of sale. You do what is called a deed of gift. And you're giving them free, out of natural love and affection. To make that transaction binding, the two parties, the donor and the donee, are expected to execute that document and sign it. Now that document is kept at that place called the Deeds Registry, because it's the depository or repository of all deeds. That's why it is called the Registry of Deeds. And it is kept there. So if you lose your copy, you can always go back there and get a copy. Many of you may require, there may be an error in your name, or you may wish to add a name to your existing name, or delete a name from your existing name, or simply correct a spelling, or if you are known by two names, you may wish to legalize the two names. So you are known as John Brown and James Brown. Now to make that name legal, or to make that correction to your name and to legalize it and to give it legal effect, or if you want to adopt a name legally, you name James Brown, but you want to put James Brown Green. To get that green added, you have to execute a legal document called a deed poll. And that deed poll, again, has to be filed at the registry of deeds. Now, all of you have to come to Georgetown to do it. But we are opening that now. Next month, we are going to do it in Lethem. So you have an office in Lethem. We opened one last month in Mabaruma. So Region 1, you have an office in Mabaruma, and we are going to put a satellite office in Port Kaituma because of the number of transactions. And then we are going to Region 8 and Region 7 and then Region 10. Before the end of the year, we are hoping to establish these offices. But let me get back to the functions so that you understand the repertoire of services that you can acquire and access at these offices. So I just dealt with a few deeds. So many of you may have a business and you need to register the business, because in law, once you have a business, it is advisable that you register it so that it becomes part of the official record of the country. And you can use your business name and you can transact business in that name and you can get your TIN number in that name. Well, the place to register that business is right there, the deeds and the commercial registry. If you want to incorporate a company, which is a different legal animal, then that is the place also to register your companies. And there are many, many other functions that will be performed at this agency. And right now, you know that you have to travel to Georgetown to access these services. You will now get these services in your community. The other important thing is, and these offices are going to be permanent, so they're there. But we are coming in, we are not simply going in to open the offices. We will come in to your communities and we will hold outreaches to explain to you in greater details the functions of the office. And the President has instructed that we spend a couple days in your communities to deal with legal issues. So I will work with a team of lawyers. Because when we went to Mabaruma, plenty legal issues. Port Kaituma, plenty legal issues. And you don't know what your rights are, so you don't even know what is wrong. So many of you, as I said, your names, you have one name on your ID card, it's a different name on your birth certificate. It's a different, you have a passport, you have another name. We need to bring all these things because they cause you problems when you go to transact business. Many of the babies in the villages are not, our children, they're not registered. The births were never registered. I saw dozens of them in Port Kaituma and Mabaruma. We need to go there. We are filling up the forms. We have the JPs and everybody there. We are stamping it. We are sending it to Georgetown to process these legal documents. When you die or when your relatives die, you're supposed to get a death certificate. None of these things are being done. And we need to bring you into the statistics of the country. So all of that we will be doing on these outreaches. Significantly, I want to tell you that because of the volume of work, there's a place called the General Register Office. And that's where all the birth certificates, marriage certificates, and death certificates are generated. we have put a desk in that office for every region to expedite the processes of your document. So Region 9 has its own desk in that office. Region 10, Region 1, and so on. And we may even have to add to that complement because of the volume of work that has to be done. So there's another major initiative that is going to unfold in your communities in due course. We have passed in the Parliament a law that's called the Restorative Justice Act. And many of the Tushaus here, well, the older ones, and many of you may have been re-elected, we have trained you already in the area of restorative justice. And the new Tushaus who have been elected, we will have to train you. Now, restorative justice is a simple way that will allow you as community leaders in particular to participate in the criminal justice system of this country, whereby when a person is charged or even before the person is charged, the police can recommend or the magistrate can recommend that you send this particular case, if it is not a serious violent offense or if it's not a sexual offense, because there are certain exempted cases, exempted classes of offenses, send it to restorative justice. And once you are trained as a restorative justice officer, then you can put the two parties together and sort out this matter and come back to the magistrate with a report, and that will be the end of the case. Every one of you as Tushaus, we will train. We will train. We have already trained about 3 batches over the last 3 years. So this is a new batch now that we will train. We will bring you to Georgetown, train you, you will be certified so you can go to the magistrate's court in your communities and the magistrate will refer these cases to you because they have a duty to do so by law. That's a new measure that will allow you to become part of the justice system in your community. You are already governing. You will now participate in the justice system. And this is a very, very important part of your everyday life. Just in passing, again, you are the only group of Guyanese who can impose your own tax. You know that, right? Derek, you know that? You could go back to my Coney and charge VAT, a different rate from the government charging out here. I'm not advocating that you do that. But that's the kind of power that you have. That's the kind of power that you have. As I am on the justice system, let me also remind you that you know, and many of you interact with the court system, not by choice, but that is a fact of everyday life. So you know that 5 years ago or more, the court would sit once every 2 months, sometimes once every quarter in your community. We are changing that rapidly. When we are building courts in your communities now, we are putting residential facilities in those courts, so the magistrate lives there and will preside for several days at a time. You know, sometimes you got to travel for miles to come out of your particular community to come to the magistrate's court, and then when you reach, the magistrate finished for the day. That will not happen anymore. You will have regular sittings, more frequent sittings, and at regular intervals, so that the system of justice will work swifter in your communities. Another important issue that I want to address is the change in magisterial districts. Like the comrades in Region 10, a couple of years ago, you would know that if you have to collect Malali, if you have to get maintenance for a wife or a child, and you're living in Malali, you had to go all the way to Vredenhoek Magistrates Court to get that maintenance. We have changed that now, and we have created a magisterial district in Region 10, where you can go, all the riverine areas in Region 10 can go to that district office and conduct all business in relation to that court or that magisterial district, because that Wisma is on the other side of the river, so it was considered the West Demerara Magisterial District. So that is why you have to go all the way to the Magistrates Court at Vredenhoek to collect your maintenance. We are changing that. And we are going to align it that way in all the other magistrates' courts in the country. Madhya, you have a brand new court. We will commission that shortly. Brand new air-conditioned court at Madhya. Port Kaituma, brand new court. We will commission that shortly. Mabaruma, brand new magistrates court. We will commission that shortly. We have a brand new court at Lethem. We have a brand new court at Bartica. Monkey Mountain, you will get a brand new magistrates court perhaps next year. So we are rebuilding across the country the justice system now. And you all know that you are going to court now. You don't have to physically go to court if you don't wish to, because we have put in place the mechanism. As a result of COVID, one good thing that came out of it is the operation of the Zoom platform. So in your villages, you can attend court. Once you have the internet and you have Wi-Fi and you have your computer, you can attend court in your village. All of these are the new innovative changes that we are working to implement, and we have implemented to ensure that you have a better quality of life. And we work with you every day to make that a reality. And you don't have to accept me saying that to you. You have been here from Monday, and you would have met with the president, the vice president, the prime minister, and every single minister of our government. We are spending an entire week ensuring that we are here. You know how much work we have to do? But we have dedicated this entire week to be here and to be with you. We don't fly into your community and give you an empty bag and tell you better must come. Or give you an umbrella and then go and discover pit latrine somewhere in Philippi. We work with you in a real way. This is what governance is. This is what a caring government does. And you are intelligent people. You must understand these things. I mustn't be telling you these things. You must be judging these things for yourselves. So I will stop there. I think I have exceeded my time, and I will pause for us to have the interactive session. Thank you very much for your attention and time.